My love of video games, like yours, absolutely defined my childhood. So I can't imagine what it would be like if my ability to play video games was abruptly, and tragically, ripped away. If the story from Nintendo is to be believed, that was the case for a young girl in 1987. Not much is known about this girl, but her tragic story and the advocacy of her mother helped inspire what was one of the great breakthroughs for disabled children and adults who wanted to play video games. This is the sweet story of the hands free controller by Nintendo, one that I find to be genuinely inspiring and a first in a long line of video game controllers built for individuals with different physical abilities. It began with a letter, or a phone call, from the mother of a young girl in 1987. According to the girl's mother, her daughter had been involved in a car accident, and as a result, had lost the use of her hands. This is obviously tragic on about 1,000 different levels, but the mother had a very important question for Nintendo. Was there anything they could do for her? Was there any way that she could play video games again? As it happens, Nintendo was already working on something. As marketing from the company would later say, Nintendo was attempting to create a controller that would allow individuals who didn't have use of their hands the ability to play a Nintendo game. As I said, unfortunately, I can't find any information confirming the veracity of the story, and unless I'm missing something, the identity of the girl and her mom have never been confirmed. The fact that even Nintendo's own marketing material admits that the story, quote, partially inspired the development of the hands free controller has me a little bit suspicious. Like, Nintendo was already working on the device, and the letter from the girl's mom had them working on it even harder. Honestly, I hate to be that guy, but this story seems more like a marketing ploy. Now, that being said, even if this exact story isn't true, there is no question that children and adults who became abruptly paralyzed lost the ability to play video games. As such, Nintendo did have the opportunity to provide them with a controller that gave them that ability back. According to Nintendo, the company had either been developing or testing the controller with kids at the Children's Orthopedic Hospital in Seattle. It was at this hospital that the prototype was first developed, and children first used the device with the assistance and input of physical therapists. That physical therapy component was part of how Nintendo marketed the device. In the fourth ever Nintendo Power magazine, Nintendo ran a NES Journal article on the device, formally announcing the product and discussing how it could be used for physical exercise, saying, quote, HFC players strengthen their neck muscles while playing their favorite video games. The controller was formally released in spring 1989. The operation of the controller was truly unique. The body of the controller was positioned on a player's chest with a strap around their neck keeping it stable. A flexible straw was placed by the player's mouth, and an adjustable arm could be used to adjust the spot where the straw would be placed. Sipping the straw would be A, blowing into it would be B. Start and select were activated by doing the same things, but harder. Furthermore, buttons on the chest portion of the device could be used for select or start. I imagine those could be used by the player if they had any use of their hands, or by someone who was with them. A flexible strap was placed by or on the player's chin. Players would then move their head to simulate the movements of the D-pad. Obviously, there were limitations. Simultaneous use of the A and B button was impossible, and making any sort of quick or rapid movement was challenging, to say the least. You also couldn't play games that require the use of other peripherals or controllers, like Duck Hunt or Wild Gunman. But that really didn't matter. The device was a major step forward for individuals who couldn't use their hands and wanted to play video games, and that makes it a great thing. Indeed, there was no major market that forced Nintendo to do this. There was no profit motive here, and Nintendo likely didn't move a ton of these devices. It's one of those rare things that Nintendo seemed to do just to be good. One of the more well known faces for the hands free controller was this young boy, Todd Stablefeldt. Stablefeldt was born in 1979 and is 11 in this picture. As noted in an article in Boys Life magazine, Stablefeldt had a full life for someone so young. He coached baseball, spoke about gun safety, and played video games. The last part is critical. At the age of 8, Stablefeldt was injured in a gun accident, resulting in paralysis from the neck down. A video game player before his accident, Stablefeldt wanted to play video games and became one of the first users of the Nintendo hands-free controller. In the Boys Life magazine articles, Stablefeldt described the use of the controller as easy, noting that the straw method used for A and B on the controller is something that other quadriplegic individuals were already used to. Stablefeldt used computers and appliances that way, including an Apple computer that he could control via Morse code, so it made perfect sense to design a controller with the same type of mechanism. Stablefeldt's work was rewarded by having him as the face of much of the marketing for the device, as well as on the instruction manual. As a side note, Stablefeldt remains active in the disabilities community, with his website noting his career as an entrepreneur, computer technology expert, and speaker. It would seem that the early experience with Nintendo left a lasting impression on Stablefeldt's life. Unfortunately, I don't know how many of these devices were sold. I do know that they weren't available commercially, and they had to be special ordered through a hotline. According to the 1990 World Championship Nintendo magazine, over 100 were sold at the time of that magazine's publication, and I'm sure many more were sold after the fact. The controller itself sold for $120, which is about $307 in 2025 money. I've also seen writings that said Nintendo sold the controller at cost and didn't make a profit on the device, though I can't confirm that. Either way, given the relatively small amount of controllers that were sold, it seems extremely likely that Nintendo did not see a massive influx of cash from its sale. Furthermore, a $179 package was available that came with the controller, the Nintendo itself, and a game. I don't know what game that was, but I'm guessing it was a standard pack-in game for whatever was being sold at the time. It's rare that a story seems to be such a win, but as noted by others who are far more knowledgeable on the subject than me, including gaming accessibility content creators like Laura Dale, this was great. Nintendo did everything right. They used the best technology available at the time, consulted with disabled individuals and medical professionals, and sold the system at cost as part of an effort to ensure that all players had access to the games that they needed. Unfortunately, Nintendo largely fell off in this space. It's worth noting that the premiere of the hands-free controller came closer to the premiere of the Super Nintendo rather than the regular Nintendo. The Super Nintendo was released about 2.5 years after the hands-free controller made its premiere, and, as noted by others, including Laura, this is where Nintendo fell off. There was no hands-free controller for the Super Nintendo. Obviously, the model of such a controller would need to be changed, as the Super Nintendo controller had more buttons. However, in theory, this shouldn't have stopped the development of such a device. Unfortunately, Nintendo never moved on. Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube. Unless I'm really missing something, and to be clear, I might be, the hands-free controller is the only controller produced for individuals with disabilities by Nintendo themselves. That is incredibly disappointing. That's not to say that individuals with difficulty using their hands are completely out of luck, and things did get better with the creation of the Nintendo Switch. While Nintendo did not create first-party accessories, third-party companies filled in the gap. The Hori Flex controller for the Switch is, according to the developer, designed to help individuals with an array of physical challenges use the Switch. The system can be used as a standard controller, but it also contains a series of different ports that can be attached to specialized buttons. From there, players can create their own system that works for them and their abilities. This controller works well with other controllers like the Optima joystick. However, again, the Flex controller is a third-party controller, not one produced directly by Nintendo. Nintendo does have some alternative options for the Switch itself, as you can remap buttons for other controllers. In theory, this can be used to make Switch controllers or other third-party controllers easier to use for people with disabilities. Starting in 2011, controllers with Switch-based inputs were sold. The first controller, the Adroit, was designed for the Xbox 360, but could be used for other systems, including Nintendo ones. As time moved on, the disabilities community began to see more options. This included games like Borderlands, which offered a colorblind mode, and Uncharted 4, which offered a slew of new playstyles and UI for individuals with disabilities. It is safe to say that Microsoft, not Nintendo, has become a leader in this area. Microsoft has been making accessibility controllers since 2014 when engineers, led by Matt Height, saw the use of customized gaming controllers. As such, Height and Xbox began to work on a formal Xbox adaptability controller. These controllers have evolved over time. Available for $99.99, today's Xbox adaptability controller is deeply customizable and meant to work with an array of other devices, ensuring that all players who want to play have the opportunity to do so. As noted on their website, Xbox has worked with a series of other partners, including Able Gamers Charity, the Cerebral Palsy Foundation, Special Effect, Warfighter Engaged, and more. In other words, Microsoft and Xbox did exactly what you're supposed to do. They solicited feedback from the community and built a solid controller that enabled them to serve all gamers. Nintendo's lack of disability-friendly options is disappointing, and it's even more disappointing given their really good history in this area. Fortunately, the Switch did make improvements. Grant Stoner, writing for the Washington Post, discussed his experience with the Switch. Stoner was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 2 at the age of 13, limiting his fine motor skills and movements. He's written extensively on the subject of accessibility in gaming. In this 2020 article, Stoner noted all the ways that the Switch made gaming more accessible for individuals with limited movement. Since 2020, the Switch has allowed for customizable controls for licensed controllers, ensuring that gamers can create a control system that works for them. The ability of players to remove Switch controllers from the system also made it easier to grasp and manipulate the system. Switch controllers can potentially be used in just one hand, further enhancing accessibility. Players can also plug USB adapters directly into the Switch, giving them the chance to use their own controllers. However, none of this is a Nintendo licensed product. And candidly, that's shocking. PlayStation and Xbox both have first party solutions, and Nintendo doesn't. Considering that the company was literally decades ahead of others in developing disability friendly controllers, it's kind of sad to see that Nintendo has turned away from its noble history in this area. To those of you who use these controllers or solutions, I would love to hear your experience, particularly if you ever used the Nintendo hands free controller. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you did like this video, I do hope you will like, subscribe, or click on the next video that the almighty YouTube algorithm will serve up for you. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day out there, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I liked making it. Take care.